Here is a pound of salmon fillet that we're going to slice for sashimi, nigiri, and rolls. If you're working with Western style knives, you'll need a boning knife and a chef's knife for this task. Start by running your hand on top of the fillet in the thicker part to see if you have any pin bones that need to be removed. They form a row from head to tail, and most high-end fishmongers remove them for you. But if you run into any, you should get them out with needle nose pliers or tweezers. Once your salmon is deboned, we're going to be dividing it into lengthwise sections based on the direction of the grain. The grain are the lines of the connective tissue that you can see in your fillet. All right, so I'll grab my chef's knife, and I see all my connective tissue oriented the same way in the belly of the fish. So I'm going to take that section off. Around the bloodline of the fish, you see this little brown section? That's the bloodline. That's where the grain of the fish starts zigzagging. See on top how it's going to go this way, that way, that way, and then finally you'll have a section where it goes for a while all in the same direction. I prefer to take this section out since it makes slicing across the grain quite difficult. And the bloodline is usually removed for raw fish dishes. Anyway, this is the brown bloodline. Here is our next section of nicely oriented flakes until they curve back. So we're going to take off the piece where they start going in the other direction. The next step is to remove the skin from your strips of fish. It could be done on the whole fillet, but will be a little bit easier on more narrow strips. Use a boning knife, and you'll be going left to right if you're right-handed, and right to left if you're left-handed. Insert it, I'm right-handed, so I'll go left to right. Insert it on the left side of your fillet to give you a little flap. Now pull really hard on this flap of skin and point your knife into the board. There we go. Here's our piece with the bloodline, and the easiest thing here might be just to cut top down with the skin being on the side, since besides removing the skin, I also want to remove bloodline. Finally, we get to slice our fish. Let's start with the belly section because its grain is most pronounced. So here I see a little zigzag towards the thinnest part, and I'll remove this. This is best to use for rolls. The most important principle of slicing fish for raw dishes is to cut it across the grain. If you cut it with the grain, you'll end up with long pieces of chewy connective tissue inside your slices, making your fish texture rather unpleasant. If you cross the grain, you will end up with very short pieces of connective tissue, giving your fish much nicer texture. So here's my grain, and I'm going to position my knife to cut across it. If I start cutting straight down, I'll end up with very small pieces, very narrow pieces, like this. If I'm cutting for nigiri, I would prefer wider pieces, so I'm going to tilt my knife to have a smaller angle to the board. Instead of a 90-degree angle this way, I want to have, closer to a 45-degree angle. So let's see how that affects the slices that I'll get. See how I get a much wider slice. It's also a slightly more tapered slice, making it very attractive. Here is our thickest part of the fillet, and in order to cut it across the grain, I'm going to have to position my knife this way. This is a little awkward, so let me rotate my fillet like this so that I can hold my knife in a more natural position. It's pretty thick, so it might not be necessary to tilt the knife too much. Let's see what we'll have. Yeah, these are very nice rectangular looking pieces. Here is our center of the fillet, which had the bloodline. The easiest thing to do here is to place it on the board bloodline up so that you can see where it is and cut it out. And cut one strip to the left of the bloodline and one strip to the right. In the center there is a lot of chewiness and connective tissue, so it's best to discard that piece. These you can use for your rolls. And here's the very back of the fillet, which is best used for rolls. It's a nice straight strip. So let's see what we ended up with in the end. We have some nice rectangular pieces from the belly, fabulous for nigiri. We have some nice pieces from the center of the fillet, which we can use for either nigiri or sashimi. We have some strips, which can work very nicely for rolls. And we have some odds and ends, like these little triangular pieces that you always end up with when you start slicing your strip of fish. This you can chop up, mince, mix with spicy mayo, and make some nice spicy salmon rolls.